What is the biggest problem with Space Engineers? Well, quite simply, the game doesn't do a very good job of telling people how to play it. Or does it? As always, I don't expect you to take things I say as fact without providing you evidence, so we're going to go over all the methods this game has of teaching you, including the learning to survive scenario, good bot, the F1 menu, the wikis, emphasis on wikis, and YouTube tutorials. And hopefully once we've gone over all of those, I can prove to you the point I'm trying to make. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Now, I'm probably the only person in the world to have played the Learning to Survive scenario twice, because I played it once to record it, and like an idiot, I deleted the footage, so I'm probably the only person who can say they're a Learning to Survive expert. And with that said, I actually think the Learning to Survive scenario is pretty good. It's actually much better than I thought it would be, and I kind of regret not suggesting people to play it in the past. So, what makes it good? In my opinion, it works exactly how I wanted it to. So, you load into the world and there's a series of waypoints for you to go to. Each waypoint has a button next to it, which starts the given tutorial for that area, giving you a list of bullet points for you to complete. Now, I will say, I do immediately have a criticism of this, and that I feel like these bullet points could be broken down into more sections, as currently there's a lot of cases where it says, do this thing, without really explaining the steps to do it. However, I feel for the most part, those things are quite obvious, it's kind of just a nitpick, but I'm thinking if you're like the lowest of the low, you might need a bit more hand-holding to get there. I will also mention that it does miss out a couple of things. The most notable in my opinion is the build planner, which is something every time I bring up, everyone's like, wow, I didn't know the build planner existed. So I feel like it could be a good idea for that to be here. But aside from that, this tutorial is pretty good. It shows you basically everything you need to know to play the game. There's tutorials on building ships, using inventory system, remote control, jump drives, etc. Pretty much everything you need to know to get started. The only other criticism I'll say is that each of these tutorials is on an asteroid, and these asteroids are pretty far apart, taking a couple of minutes to get to them, which if you're doing a tutorial isn't very exciting. So the only other change I would suggest to make to this is to compress all of these asteroids into one place, maybe like a planet, and then all these tutorials are kind of in range of the player to do, so they just walk to the next tutorial. So overall, this took me about 2 hours to complete the first time, and bearing in mind I do know how to play the game, or claim to anyway, so it might take you a bit longer, but most of that was travelling between the waypoints. So like I said, if they compress that down to a smaller location, I think the tutorial for the game would actually be perfect. But yeah, I really don't have a problem with the Learning to Survive scenario. I actually think it's a really good tool for teaching new players to play the game. Good bot is probably the thing that you turned off as soon as you started playing the game, and I feel like that's probably a bad idea. Good bot really goes hand in hand with the Learning to Survive scenario, because everything the Learning to Survive scenario doesn't tell you how to do, good bot does. Good bot gives you contextual help when you need it. For example, if you get flung into space like I did here, it will give you a bullet point list of the jetpack controls and hints how they could be used effectively. Or in another example, when you get into the cockpit of a ship, it lists all the controls for you to test out. This actually combats my previous criticism of the Learning to Survive scenario, as it gives you bullet points for each step of the tasks it wants you to do in order to make sure you know what you're doing. Again, for new players of the game, this is a very useful tool for teaching them the basics of the game. So I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever used the F1 menu, but it was something I was extremely surprised about as well. Now, if you press F1, the first thing you're immediately brought to is the tutorial page. So it has links to Space Engineers' official tutorial videos. And at the bottom, it has the link to the wiki, which we'll go to my own problems with later. However, everything else on the left is very useful. So basic controls, as you imagine, is all the controls in the game. I really don't think most people are having problems with these controls, as these are the stuff that pretty much everyone knows, or Goodbot will tell you. The bit I'm most interested in is the advanced controls, as, you ready for this? Build planner, it's in the game. All these times I've complained about build planner and it's right there. It tells you how to do it. All you have to do is read. I actually created my channel to tell people about the build planner, as when I found out about it, I was furious that no one had told me about it. I would spend hours grabbing each component from my storage to weld up blocks, when there was a much easier solution the entire time, and there's scarce mention of it anywhere unless you know what you're looking for. There is other stuff in here, but you know, the build planner is by far Space Engineers' most useful feature. I feel like now I know everything that's in this menu, but back when I first started playing, this would have been an invaluable resource for me to know. It also very usefully has all the controller controls, which is, spoiler for the section on the wiki later on, very difficult to find. There is also a section on commands here, but the game doesn't really have many commands without mods, so I wouldn't really worry about it. But if you really wanted to know how to smite your friends, the option is here. I don't really have much more to say on the F4 menu, but I can't tell you how unbelievably happy I am that the build planner is in this menu. So, for some reason, Space Engineers has two wikis. I'm going to tell you right now, both of them are awful. The information on them is either out of date, the information doesn't exist, or the information on there is just plain wrong. I have two really easy examples for this. One, during my video where I was doing top tips, I really wanted to find out where the handbrake button for console is. And whilst I now know it's in the F1 menu, it is nowhere on either wiki of the game. Another easy example is when I was making my video on ranking all the weapons in Space Engineers, I wanted to make sure I had all the stats so I could empirically prove which weapons were better than the other weapons. And both wikis have completely different numbers for all the weapons, and they're different to the numbers I was getting when I was testing them in game. I can't even understand how both wikis are wrong on this. It's just crazy to me. Part of me wants to go full wiki warrior and just update both wikis to be correct with the information that I know is correct because I've tested it, but I really don't have the time to do that because I would be there forever. It's crazy to me that they are both this bad and that so many things about the game are just completely undocumented. I will say the number of times I want to look up something about the game and I find the page for it and the page is either empty or doesn't have the information I need. It's a lot, let's put it that way. Although as a YouTuber, I do have the unique ability to just say something in my video, and if I'm wrong, 1,000 people will correct me. So maybe we should all be YouTubers, maybe that's the way forward. The way YouTube works is when you search for something, it will recommend you the most popular videos based on what you searched. The main issue is with that the most popular Space Engineers tutorials were all made when the game came out as official release or earlier, meaning that things that have been added since then, I think you probably get where I'm going with this, aren't in the tutorials. So, the build planner may or may not have been added after the game's release, so most of these tutorials don't include it in them. I feel like this video is just a closet way of me complaining about the build planner. So this means all these people that are searching for tutorials on YouTube aren't learning about what I've said multiple times in this video, one of the most useful features in the game. And I don't really know what a solution to that is, because people are making more up-to-date tutorials. I've made one, I know a couple of other YouTubers have made tutorials recently, and they do include the build planner in them. But the fact is, the most popular tutorials on YouTube for Space Engineers are out of date. Now, this is normally the part of the video where I tell you a solution to the problem, but as you've probably noticed going through this video, I don't really think there's a problem. The in-game resources for learning Space Engineers are actually really good. Aside from a couple of tweaks I mentioned earlier in the video, I think they're perfectly adequate for teaching new players how to play the game. I think the main problem is the external resources for the game. I understand that wikis have to be edited by real human people and that takes time, but they're really bad. I've played games that are much smaller than Space Engineers that have much better wikis, so I don't understand what's happened here. The issue with YouTube tutorials is also something we can't resolve, because we'll forever be at the whims of whatever videos YouTube recommends to us. Unless you like and subscribe, wink wink. But regardless of the tutorial you watch, you're going to learn a lot about the game. So when I come to solutions, I guess the solution is, if you know someone who wants to learn the game, get them to play the in-game tutorial first, because God help them trying to find any information outside of the game. And please, please, please tell them about the build planner. No one should have to go through the struggles I went through, where I took each individual component out of the inventory to weld up blocks. Now, multiple times in this video, I've mentioned that I was annoyed about not finding out about the build planner, considering how much better it makes the game. So in turn, what feature revolutionized your gameplay when you found out about it? Let me know with the comment below. And as always, like and subscribe for more Space Engineers content.